Are you facing challenges that seem impossible to overcome? Do you feel like your dreams are slipping away no matter how hard you try? In this video, we explore the powerful truth that what looks like a setback might be a setup for something greater. Through the inspiring story of Joseph, we uncover how God uses trials, discomfort, and even opposition to position us for greatness. You'll discover why the struggles you're facing today are not signs of failure, but stepping stones to your next breakthrough. We'll dive into the essential lessons of trusting God's process, letting go of the old to make room for the new, and understanding that every battle is shaping you for something greater. If you've been wondering why things feel harder or why you're facing resistance, this video is for you. It's time to shift your perspective, step into your purpose, and trust that after the fire comes the elevation. Watch until the end and find the strength to embrace your next level. Before we start, I'd appreciate your support. If you liked the video, please subscribe and hit the bell to stay updated on future lessons from God. Perhaps right now, in the depth of your struggle, you feel as though you're trapped in an endless pit, forgotten, overlooked, lost in the wilderness of waiting. Every day seems like it stretches on forever, and the weight of uncertainty presses down on you like a heavy, suffocating fog. But I want to ask you, could it be that what you are experiencing isn't punishment, but divine preparation? Could it be that the things you've lost, the dreams that seem shattered, the doors that have slammed shut in your face, the people who walked away when you needed them most, were never meant to follow you into the next chapter of your life? When God sets out to elevate someone, to prepare them for a greater calling, He does not do it lightly. His ways are not random or haphazard. He does not simply grant blessings without first fortifying and strengthening the soul. He does not elevate without first refining, without chiseling away the things that weigh us down. So, if you feel the sting of discomfort, if trials have taken root in your life, if you are surrounded by silence and feel the quiet heaviness of being unseen, understand this. These are not signs that God has forgotten you. These are signs that He is working in the unseen, doing a deep, transformative work within you. Consider the story of David. David was anointed to be king of Israel, chosen for greatness. But did he immediately step onto the throne, basking in glory and honor? No. Instead, he was sent back to the lonely fields to tend sheep. He was called to humble service, not immediate leadership. Instead of being celebrated, he was hunted. Instead of being crowned, he found himself in hiding. But in that very season of loneliness, of being overlooked and rejected, God was shaping him, preparing him for something far greater. David fought battles in secret, overcoming lions and bears in the wilderness, victories that no one saw. But these struggles were not meaningless. They were strengthening him for the moment when he would face Goliath. Those private battles prepared him for public victory. Many people long for the blessings, the rewards, the elevation, but few are willing to endure the preparation that comes before it. People want the crown, but they shy away from the refining fire. They long for the breakthrough, but resist the deep work required to bring them to that place. But hear me, God does not place crowns on untested heads. He does not bestow power and authority on those who have not been tested, who have not been refined in the furnace of life. He does not pour out favor on those who are not yet prepared to carry it with grace and wisdom. So if you feel like you're being pressed on every side, if you feel like you're walking through fire, do not despise this season of testing. It is not here to break you, it is here to build you. It is not here to destroy you, it is here to prepare you. Think about gold, a simple, ordinary substance, right? But gold does not become precious until it has passed through the fire. It does not shine with brilliance until it has been melted, purified, and stripped of its impurities. So it is with you. The trials and the struggles you are facing are not signs that God has abandoned you. They are proof that God sees something valuable in you, something precious that He is preparing to bring to the surface. He is removing the things that cannot go with you into your future. He is refining you, shaping you, purifying you for the purpose He has for your life. The Bible says in Isaiah 43:19, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." Notice, though, that the new thing God is doing often isn't immediately visible. It requires faith to trust that something is being birthed, even when you can't see it, even when the circumstances feel barren and dry. Just like Abraham, who was told to leave his homeland, not knowing where he was going or how everything would unfold. He didn't have a map, he didn't have all the answers, but he had faith. And because of his obedience, because he trusted in the process, God made him the father of many nations. But what if Abraham had resisted? What if he had clung to the comforts of the familiar and refused to step out? He would have missed the incredible blessings that lay beyond his obedience. And now, what about you? Could it be that God is calling you to step out in faith, to release something that's been holding you back, an old mindset, a toxic relationship, a fear that has kept you stuck in place, for something greater that's just ahead? The problem is that many of us pray for change, yet we resist the very process that brings it. We beg for elevation, but we hold tightly to the burdens and weights that are keeping us grounded. We want the blessings of the promised land, but we refuse to leave the wilderness. Let me tell you this: you cannot enter the next season of your life while clinging to the remnants of the past. If you've been feeling a deep, unshakable restlessness in your soul, if you sense that something is shifting within you, do not ignore it. This is not just your imagination playing tricks on you. It is not some passing feeling. It is the whisper of God, stirring your spirit, awakening you to the new thing He is about to do. You may not see the full picture just yet. You may not understand why certain things are unfolding the way they are. But let me assure you, just because you cannot see the evidence, doesn't mean God is not working behind the scenes. He is aligning people, orchestrating circumstances, and moving pieces into place for your breakthrough. But here's the question: will you trust Him in the process? Will you trust that the fire is not meant to destroy you, but to refine you? Will you trust that the shaking is not here to break you, but to position you for greater things? Will you trust that what feels like a loss is making room for something greater to take its place? God does not prepare everyone this way. Some people are content to remain where they are, settling for a life far below what God intended. But if you are feeling this divine discontent, if you sense this holy restlessness in your spirit, it is because you are not called to live an ordinary life. You are being prepared for more. So, are you ready for what's to come? If you've been questioning what's happening in your life, if you've been wondering why everything seems uncertain, let me tell you, you're not losing. You are leveling up. But before you step into that next season, before you embrace the blessings that are waiting for you, you must recognize the signs. You must understand how God prepares His chosen ones for elevation. If you fail to recognize the process, you might resist it. And if you resist it, you could delay the very breakthrough God has in store for you. Let's talk about the first sign that God is preparing you for a major level up. Sudden discomfort in familiar places. There comes a moment in the journey of faith when the places that once brought you comfort start to feel alien and foreign. The relationships, the routines, and the activities that once brought peace now stir up unease. This is not a sign of failure, nor is it a sign of confusion. This is divine discomfort. It's God stirring something in your spirit because you're outgrowing your current season, and He is calling you to something far greater. Look at the story of the Israelites in Egypt, a story steeped in centuries of oppression, heartache, and struggle. For years they endured unimaginable hardship, yet something even more heartbreaking happened. Many of them grew so accustomed to their suffering, so entrenched in their bondage, that when the opportunity for freedom came, they were reluctant to embrace it. When God sent Moses to lead them out, not all of them were ready to leave. Some even longed to return to the very place that had enslaved them. Why? Because there's something profoundly human about clinging to the familiar, even when it is destructive. Sometimes the comfort of what is known, even if it is painful, feels safer than stepping into the unknown. Even when God is calling us higher, the pull to hold on to what is familiar, what we think we can control, can be overwhelming. But hear me when I say this. If you feel discomfort in places that once brought you peace, if the things that once fit perfectly in your life now feel like they are pushing against your spirit, that is not an accident. That is a spiritual indicator. God is moving you. There is a reason why at some point in their lives all birds must grow restless in their nests. There comes a time in their journey when their wings must stretch beyond the walls of comfort. It is only in the discomfort of leaving the nest that they are prepared to soar. They cannot fulfill their purpose if they remain confined to what is familiar and safe. The mother bird knows this, so she begins to stir up the nest, making it uncomfortable. She removes the soft feathers and sharpens the branches to encourage her young to leave. Why? Because discomfort is the catalyst for flight. Could it be that God is making your nest uncomfortable? Are you feeling restless, like you no longer belong in the places where you once thrived? Are relationships that once nourished you now causing tension in your heart? Are the old passions that once ignited you now dimming, no longer carrying the same spark? If so, don't resist it. Embrace it. The Bible beautifully describes this in Deuteronomy 32:11. Like an eagle that stirs up its nest and hovers over its young, that spreads its wings to catch them and carries them aloft. God does not allow discomfort to harm us. He allows it to propel us into our divine assignment, to push us into the destiny He has planned for us. Think of Joseph. Before he stepped into his grand destiny, he had to leave the comfort of his father's house. But Joseph didn't leave on his own accord. He was sold into slavery, stripped of everything he knew. What he couldn't see at the time was that the very place that once provided him comfort was no longer where God wanted him to be. God had something far greater in store for him. But before he could walk into that future, he had to endure the discomfort, the stripping away of everything familiar. If you are feeling out of place, it's because God is preparing you for something greater. He is not allowing you to settle for what's comfortable because He has more in store for you. So ask yourself, are you resisting change? Are you clinging to comfort in places where God is trying to move you from? Remember, the discomfort you feel is not punishment. It is preparation. God is calling you higher. The question is, will you trust Him enough to leave the nest behind? Sign 2. Unusual delays and closed doors. Nothing tests faith like waiting. How many times have you prayed fervently for an opportunity, only to find that the doors remain firmly shut? You step out in obedience, you do what you believe God is calling you to do, yet nothing seems to move. You cry out for answers, but heaven feels silent. This, my friend, is not rejection. It is a divine delay. It is God's way of positioning you, preparing you for something greater than you could ever orchestrate on your own. Consider the story of Lazarus. When he became ill, his sisters sent word to Jesus, hoping he would come immediately. But Jesus delayed, and amid that delay, Lazarus died. To them it must have felt cruel. It must have felt like abandonment, like God had forgotten them. But Jesus knew something they did not. The delay was necessary for a greater miracle. When He finally arrived, He didn't just heal Lazarus, He resurrected him. What they had viewed as a setback was, in fact, a setup for greater glory. Had Jesus come when they had expected, they would have only seen a healing. But because of the delay, they witnessed the awe-inspiring resurrection power of God. Could it be that the doors you're waiting to open are not closing because God is rejecting you? Could it be that the delay is not a denial, but a divine protection, keeping you from something that isn't yet in alignment with your calling? So many times we rush into things before the timing is right. We settle for relationships or opportunities that aren't aligned with the destiny God has for us because we are impatient. We force our path, but God's ways don't follow our human timetables. Isaiah 60:22 tells us, "When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen." When God is preparing you for elevation, He often closes doors you are not yet ready to walk through. The delay is not because He is withholding from you, it's because He is strengthening you. Sometimes the worst thing that could happen is for you to receive a blessing prematurely. There is something powerful that happens in the waiting. It refines us, builds our character, and strengthens our trust in God's timing. So, don't be discouraged by the closed doors or the delays. Understand that they are not barriers, they are opportunities for God to shape you for what's ahead. David's story is one of incredible promise, immense patience, and relentless faith. As a teenager, David was anointed by God to be king, a title that carried with it a future of greatness, power, and leadership. But despite receiving this divine promise, David did not step onto his throne immediately. Instead, he was thrust into years of hardship, pursued by King Saul, enduring unimaginable trials that seemed to never end. Saul's jealousy and rage led David into hiding, living in caves, hunting like an animal, and enduring what seemed like senseless and unjust treatment. At times, the future king of Israel was forced to wander in the wilderness, far from the throne he was destined to sit upon. Yet, during this long and seemingly unfair period of exile, something profound was happening. God was preparing David for the greatness He had already ordained. God wasn't ignoring David's plight. He wasn't punishing him. No, God was doing a deep work within him. Each day David spent hiding in caves, each battle he fought in secret, and each trial he faced in solitude shaped his character. God was developing in David the strength, humility, wisdom, and discernment he would need to rule a nation. Those years of waiting, of feeling as if he had been forgotten, were not wasted. They were a part of God's perfect plan for his life. Without them, David would not have been able to handle the weight of the throne when the time came. When you find yourself in a season of delay, do not grow weary or frustrated. Understand that delays are not divine denials. If doors remain closed, it is not a sign that God has forgotten you. It is a sign that He is preparing you for something better, something greater than you can even fathom right now. The timing isn't right yet, but when it is, those doors will swing wide open. Think about Sarah, who was promised a child but had to wait years before seeing that promise fulfilled. Her story is a testament to the struggle of waiting. Sarah, unable to bear a child in her old age, took matters into her own hands and tried to rush God's plan by sending Hagar to bear a child for her. Her impatience led to turmoil and strife that could have been avoided. Had she simply trusted God's timing, the pain and heartbreak she experienced could have been spared. Instead of forcing the outcome, Sarah could have waited, trusting that when the time was right, God would fulfill His promise. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Waiting is never easy. It often feels like we are stuck, like we are in limbo, unable to move forward or backward. But remember, the greatest blessings often come after a season of waiting. The delay is not punishment, it is preparation. God is not holding back something good from you. He is simply waiting for the right moment, the perfect timing, when everything will fall into place as He has planned. When doors are closed in your life, do not be discouraged. Understand that it is not a sign of rejection, but a sign that God is setting things up for something even better. You may not see the work He is doing behind the scenes. You may not understand why things are happening the way they are, but rest assured, God is at work. He is aligning people, orchestrating circumstances, and moving pieces into place for your breakthrough. And when that breakthrough comes, it will be more glorious than you could have ever imagined. Ecclesiastes 3:11 tells us, He has made everything beautiful in its time. Your time is coming. Trust the delay. Trust that God's timing is perfect. Your doors will open, but not a moment too soon. Will you trust Him to bring you through this season? Will you surrender to the process and stop trying to force the outcome? Because when God finally moves, everything will make sense. Sign 3, increased isolation and separation. There's a kind of loneliness that comes when God begins to set you apart. It's a peculiar pain that doesn't always make sense. Friends who once felt like family begin to fade away. People you've known for years begin to pull back, and relationships you thought were solid start to crack. At first it feels like abandonment, like you're being rejected or forgotten. But I want you to understand that this is not rejection, this is refinement. When God is preparing you for a major level up, He knows that sometimes He has to separate you from people who can no longer walk with you to the places He's calling you to go. There are relationships that, while they may have been valuable in your past season, are no longer aligned with the person God is calling you to become. When God sets you apart, it's not to punish you or isolate you from love and support. It's to protect you, to keep you from distractions, and to position you for something far greater. Think about Jesus. Before He began His public ministry, the Spirit led Him into the wilderness for 40 days to be tempted by the devil, Matthew 4:01. It was not the enemy that led Him there. It was the Holy Spirit Himself. God led Jesus into the wilderness because there were lessons He needed to learn. Lessons that could only be learned in isolation, far from the noise and distractions of the world. There are things you can only learn in the wilderness. Some transformations can only take place when you are completely alone with God, when the distractions are stripped away and all you have is Him. This is when God can refine you, shape your character, and deepen your faith in ways that would never be possible in the busyness of life. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, away from the comforts of Egypt, before God called him to lead Israel out of slavery. Joseph was alone in a prison cell for years before he was lifted from that place to the palace. David, too, spent countless years in solitude, tending sheep in the fields, hiding in caves, and waiting on God's perfect timing before he was crowned King of Israel. Each of these men experienced a season of isolation, and each one emerged from that season stronger, wiser, and better prepared for the calling God had on their lives. Isolation isn't a punishment. It's a process of preparation. God is using this time to refine you, strengthen your relationship with Him, and equip you for the greatness He has planned for you. Just as the caterpillar must go through the dark, lonely process of metamorphosis before it can emerge as a butterfly, you too are going through a transformation. When the time is right, you will emerge from this season of isolation stronger, more confident, and more prepared to walk into the future God has been shaping for you. You will be equipped to handle the weight of the blessing that is coming because the wilderness has taught you things that you could not have learned any other way. Trust the process. Know that your season of separation will not last forever, and when God is ready, He will bring you into the fullness of your calling. The isolation is not a sign of rejection, it's God's way of setting you apart for something greater. Could it be that the people who are leaving your life were never meant to stay? Could it be that their absence is not a loss, but a divine adjustment orchestrated by God Himself? Sometimes, the people who are closest to us, the ones we love, the ones we have invested in, the ones who have been there through thick and thin, are the very ones who can limit our growth. Not because they are inherently bad or evil, but because they are not aligned with the destiny God has set before us. Some relationships are seasonal. They serve a purpose for a time, but we mistakenly try to make them permanent. We hold on to what God is trying to remove, but in doing so, we only delay the blessings He is preparing for us. Think about the story of Abraham and Lot. God called Abraham to leave his homeland, to step into the unknown, to follow God's command without hesitation. But instead of going alone, Abraham took Lot with him. Lot was Abraham's nephew, someone he loved deeply. Yet as time went on, conflict arose between their herders and their people. The tension became unbearable, and it was only when Lot separated from Abraham that God was able to fully bless him. It was after Lot had left that God spoke to Abraham and reaffirmed His promise to him. In Genesis 13:14-15, God tells Abraham, "Lift your eyes from where you are and look north and south, east and west. All the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever." But why did God wait until Lot left? Because sometimes the people who are close to you cannot go where God is taking you. Their presence in your life becomes a limitation, an obstacle to the full manifestation of God's plan for you. Their influence, whether through advice, past connections, or even well-meaning distractions, can pull you away from your true purpose. Separation is painful, no doubt. It hurts. It feels like a deep loss, a void in your heart. But God is not removing them to hurt you. He is making space for the new, the better, the greater things He has in store. If God is pulling people out of your life, do not fight to keep them. Let them go. You do not need their approval. You do not need their validation. The only thing you need is to stay aligned with God's will for your life. When God removes, He always replaces it with something better. If you are in a season of isolation or loneliness, do not see it as punishment. See it as preparation. God is setting you apart. He is preparing you for something greater, something you cannot even fully comprehend yet. The relationships you are meant to walk into will be the ones that will lift you higher, encourage your purpose, and help you move toward your destiny. Trust God's timing. Trust His plan. Sign 4. A deep restlessness in your spirit. There comes a time when the stirring in your soul cannot be ignored any longer. It is a discomfort deep within you, a sense that something more is coming. It's not anxiety, it's not fear. It is the Holy Spirit awakening something within you that refuses to be silenced. It is a divine restlessness, a holy discontent that pushes you towards something greater, something you are being called to fulfill. This restlessness is not a sign of trouble. It is a signal that God is getting ready to shift your life in a major way. It is a whisper that you are on the brink of something greater than anything you've known up until this point. Think of Nehemiah. He was living in the comfort of the Persian king's palace, surrounded by wealth and luxury. But when he heard about the broken walls of Jerusalem, something inside of him stirred. He could have ignored it. He could have drowned out the burden with distractions or told himself it wasn't his problem. But Nehemiah could not shake it. He couldn't silence the call in his heart. It burned inside of him like a fire. He leaned into that restlessness, and because he did, God used him to rebuild an entire city. This is how God works. He places a burden on your heart, a stirring in your spirit, to move you toward your purpose. He awakens that fire inside of you, and it refuses to be contained. If Nehemiah had ignored the feeling, he would have missed his destiny. If Moses had ignored the burden of his people, he would have never confronted Pharaoh. If Jesus had ignored his calling, he would have never gone to the cross. Have you felt that stirring lately? That deep, gnawing feeling in your soul that you were made for more, that something within you is not content with the status quo, with where you are right now. It's the Holy Spirit calling you higher, calling you out of your comfort zone and into the purpose God has ordained for you. Jeremiah 29:9 says, "But if I say, I will not mention his word or speak any more in his name, his word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot." This is the kind of stirring that God places inside of you when He's calling you to step into something bigger, something greater than you can imagine. You cannot ignore it. You cannot silence it. It will burn within you, persist, and refuse to be suppressed until you take action. But here's the danger. Many people suppress this feeling. They convince themselves that they should just be content where they are. They tell themselves that they are being ungrateful for wanting more, and that they should simply be thankful for what they have. But there's a difference between being thankful and being stagnant. Gratitude is powerful, but it should never lead to complacency. If God has placed a deep stirring in your spirit, do not ignore it. It is a divine calling. It is a sign that your current level of living is too small for what God has in store for you. Remember Peter. When Jesus called him out of the boat to walk on water, Peter could have stayed where he was. He could have ignored the pull, the stirring in his heart, but Peter knew something within him. He was meant for more. He was meant to step out into the unknown, to walk on water. And the moment he responded to that stirring, he experienced a supernatural miracle. You are being called to something greater. God has placed that divine restlessness inside of you for a reason. Do not ignore it. Lean into it. Step out in faith, just as Peter did. When you respond to the divine stirring within you, you will witness the miraculous. You will see God move in ways you never imagined. What you feel right now is not a coincidence. It is the Holy Spirit calling you to a new level, a higher purpose, and a greater destiny. Will you answer the call? What if Peter had refused? What if he had ignored the stirring deep within his soul and silenced the pull of God's call? If Peter had stayed in the boat, he would have missed the very miracle that God was calling him to. The very thing that would define his faith, that would test his courage, and that would solidify his relationship with Jesus was right in front of him. But he had to make a choice, the choice to trust, the choice to step out in faith, the choice to risk it all. If Peter had chosen fear over faith, he would have never walked on water. His destiny would have been limited to what was familiar, to what was comfortable, to what seemed safe. But God was calling him to more, calling him to something greater than he had ever imagined, and Peter had to decide whether he would listen to the stirring inside of him or let fear paralyze him. That same question echoes in your life today. Will you listen to the stirring within your spirit, or will you ignore it and remain where you are? Because here's the truth. When God is calling you higher, staying the same is no longer an option. The restlessness in your soul is not a mistake. It's not a passing feeling. It's a divine signal that something greater is ahead. But you cannot move forward if you are still clinging to the past. You cannot experience the fullness of what God has for you if you are still holding on to what He is trying to remove. The stirring inside of you is a sign that you are being called to step into a new season. A season of growth, of purpose, of breakthrough. But the question is, will you choose to step out in faith, or will you remain in the safety of the boat? Sign 5. Facing unexpected challenges. There is a misunderstanding that often comes with hardship. Many people believe that when difficulties arise, it's a sign that God has abandoned them. They question why, after praying for a breakthrough, they seem to face even greater resistance. Why, after asking for elevation, do they encounter setback after setback? The pain, the struggles, the obstacles, they seem to contradict the promises God has made. But I want to challenge this thinking today. What if your trials are not a sign of God's abandonment, but a confirmation of His preparation? Throughout Scripture, we see this pattern. Before God elevates someone, He tests them. Before He entrusts them with greater responsibility, He refines them through adversity. Before Joseph could rule in Egypt, he had to be tested in the pit, the prison, and the pain of betrayal. Before David could sit on the throne, he had to endure years of being chased, persecuted, and rejected. And before Jesus could take his place on the cross, he had to face the greatest trial of all, in the wilderness. Look at Job, a man who was righteous in the eyes of God. He was blessed beyond measure, living a life full of abundance and peace, yet in a single moment everything was stripped away. His wealth, his health, and even his children were gone. To the outside world it seemed like punishment, like abandonment. But Job understood something that many of us failed to see. He knew that these trials were not for his destruction, they were for his refinement. In Job 23:10 he says, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold." Job recognized that God was using the trials to prepare him for something greater. Could it be that the unexpected challenges you are facing are not there to break you, but to build you? Could it be that the very thing you are praying to escape is the thing God is using to equip you for your future? Jesus himself said in John 15, verses 2, "Every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful." Pruning is painful. It involves cutting away what is unnecessary and rimming back what is overgrown. But why does a gardener prune a tree? Not to harm it, but to help it grow stronger, to help it reach its full potential. If left unchecked, the tree will never grow as it was intended to. Its growth will be weak, unbalanced, and ultimately unfruitful. Only through pruning can it become strong and bear lasting fruit. So if you are facing unexpected challenges right now, ask yourself, is God pruning me for a greater purpose? Joseph had a dream of leadership. He saw himself in a place of power, in a place of influence. Yet before he could step into that dream, he was thrown into a pit by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. If you had seen him in that season, you would have thought his dream was dead. But what seemed like a setback was a setup for his future greatness. If Joseph had not been sold, he would never have entered Egypt. If he had not been falsely accused, he would have never been placed in Pharaoh's prison. If he had not been in prison, he would have never had the opportunity to interpret Pharaoh's dream. And if he had never interpreted that dream, he would have never been promoted to second in command over all of Egypt. The very trials that seemed to work against him were the very things God used to position him for his destiny. What if the same is happening in your life? What if the difficulties you are facing right now are not obstacles but stepping stones? What if the opposition you are encountering is a sign that you are on the brink of a breakthrough? The enemy does not attack people who are standing still. He does not fight those who pose no threat to his plans. He comes after those who are moving forward, who are stepping into something greater. Could this be why you are facing such intense resistance? Could this be why things seem to be getting harder, not easier? Because God is preparing you for what's ahead. The resistance you are facing is a sign that you are on the verge of your breakthrough, of the very thing you've been praying for. The enemy does not fight battles that are already won. He fights those who are on the brink of victory. And if you are facing resistance, it's because God is about to elevate you to new heights. Stay strong, trust the process. The challenges you are facing are not meant to break you. They are meant to build you into the person you need to be for the next season of your life. Keep moving forward, keep trusting, and keep believing that what God has in store for you is far greater than anything you have yet experienced. Isaiah 48:10 says, "See, I have refined you, though not of silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." These words, the furnace of affliction, carry a profound significance. A furnace is not a place of comfort or ease. It is a place of intense heat, where everything that is not pure is burned away. It is where the weak parts of us are stripped down, leaving behind only what is strong and able to withstand the refining process. In God's economy, preparation for greatness does not come in the form of comfort, but through fire. This is not meant to break you, but to mold you, to shape you into the person capable of carrying the blessing that is coming. Consider the stories of those whose faith was tested in extraordinary ways. Daniel's faith was tested when he was thrown into the lion's den. The 3 Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were tested when they were cast into the fiery furnace. Paul faced trial after trial, persecution, imprisonment, and shipwrecks. But in each case, the trial did not destroy them. It became the platform for their promotion. What was intended to defeat them was used by God to elevate them. If you are facing trials today, do not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, ask God, "What are you preparing me for?" The enemy does not waste his energy on people who are going nowhere. He attacks those who are on the verge of stepping into their purpose. Perhaps you find yourself in a place where nothing seems to be going right. You are doing everything by the book, following God, walking in obedience, praying earnestly, but still, nothing seems to work out. Heaven feels silent, and you wonder why challenges are piling up despite your faithfulness. But remember, this is not punishment. This is preparation. God is not abandoning you. He is refining you. You cannot become who you are meant to be without enduring the process. Unshakable faith cannot be formed without going through seasons that require faith. You cannot be entrusted with greater responsibility if you have not been tested and proven faithful through adversity. James 1:02 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." God is shaping you through this process. Every battle you face makes you stronger. Every challenge deepens your faith. Every storm prepares you for what is ahead. So if you are facing unexpected challenges right now, do not lose heart. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are being positioned for greatness. After the fire comes the elevation. After the test comes the promotion. After the battle comes the victory. Will you trust that God knows what He is doing? Will you endure the process, knowing that this is not the end, but the preparation for your next level? Sign 6, a call to let go of certain habits or relationships. When God prepares you for a major level up, He will always call you to release something. It may be a habit, a mindset, a toxic relationship, or even a place of comfort that is holding you back. Letting go is never easy, but it is necessary. You cannot hold on to what is old and expect to step into the new. You cannot carry excess weight and expect to run the race that God has set before you. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Think of Abraham. When God called him to leave his homeland, God didn't give him a detailed roadmap. He didn't explain every step. God simply said, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." Genesis 12:01. God did not tell Abraham exactly where he was going or what the future would look like. He didn't provide a safety net or backup plan. All he required was obedience. And what did Abraham do? He left. He let go of everything familiar, his homeland, his comfort, his security, his old way of life, because he trusted that what God had for him was greater than what he was leaving behind. Could it be that God is asking you to do the same? There is a weight that comes with holding on to what no longer serves you. Some people cling to habits, behaviors, and relationships that they know deep inside are hindering their growth. These things are distractions that keep them from moving forward into the fullness of God's plan. They justify these things. They tell themselves that they aren't harmful or that they can handle them, but deep in their spirit they know better. When God prepares you for a higher calling, He requires purification. He calls you to lay aside childish things and embrace a higher standard. He will strip away the things that are slowing you down, that are hindering your progress. The question is, are you willing to let go? Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." Notice the words, throw off everything that hinders. It's not just sin that we need to let go of. It's anything that slows us down, that distracts us from God's purpose for our lives. Some things in your life may not be outright sinful, but they are still weights. They may be hindrances that prevent you from moving toward the greatness that God has planned. They may be relationships, habits, or even environments that are holding you back. God is calling you to step into the fullness of your potential. But you cannot run the race with all that excess weight. You cannot move forward while holding on to things that are holding you back. Will you be willing to lay aside the things that hinder you? Will you trust God enough to release what He is asking you to let go of, so that you can step into the new season He has prepared for you? The choice is yours. But know this, the greater the release, the greater the blessing that awaits. Some people hold on to toxic relationships, friendships that drain them, connections that keep them tethered to old cycles of pain and dysfunction. Deep down they know these people are not aligned with where God is taking them, yet they refuse to let go. It's as if they're clinging to the familiar, even when that familiarity no longer serves them. But here's the truth. You cannot take everyone with you. Not everyone is meant to walk with you to your next level. Some people are meant to be part of your journey for a season, and when that season ends, holding on to them will only hinder your growth and delay your progress. Jesus Himself showed us the importance of this truth when He was preparing for His greatest assignment, the cross. He withdrew from the crowds, choosing not to be surrounded by people. He even left behind some of His closest disciples and retreated further into the Garden of Gethsemane, alone. There, in the stillness and solitude, He prayed, preparing His heart for the weight of the mission ahead. Jesus knew that there are some moments, some seasons, where you must walk alone with God. Not everyone is meant to go with you. Not everyone is meant to understand. It's a painful reality, but one that is essential for the next steps in your journey. If God has been nudging your spirit to walk away from something, do not ignore it. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. When God calls you to release something, He is not trying to take something from you. He is preparing to make room for something far greater. Think about the rich young ruler in Mark 10:17, verses 22. He had everything, wealth, status, a good reputation. He was living a life that many would have envied. Yet when Jesus told him to sell all his possessions and follow Him, the young man walked away sad, unwilling to release his attachments. He couldn't let go of his temporary treasures, even though Jesus was offering him eternal glory. His refusal to surrender cost him more than he could comprehend. Could it be that what you are refusing to release is the very thing holding you back from stepping into your future? Could it be that your attachment to the past is delaying your promotion? God cannot bless what you refuse to surrender. If He is calling you to step away from a relationship, it's because He sees what you cannot. He knows that for you to fully step into your next season, this relationship cannot go with you. If he is asking you to change your habits, it is because he knows what you need to thrive in the season ahead. If he is pressing you to let go of an old way of thinking, it's because your mindset must shift to receive all that he has prepared for you. Proverbs 3:5-6 offers us powerful wisdom. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Trusting God requires release. It requires you to let go of your understanding of how things should be, and embrace his way, even when it doesn't make sense. You cannot hold on to the familiar, to the old ways, and still expect to walk in faith and experience the supernatural. Faith demands that we release our grip on what is comfortable and trust God with what he has promised. So I ask you today, what is God asking you to let go of? What are you holding on to that is keeping you from stepping into the fullness of what he has for you? What excuses are you making for not surrendering completely? Is it fear of the unknown, a lack of trust, or simply the difficulty of change? Whatever it is, understand this. Your next level, your breakthrough, and your elevation are on the other side of your surrender. You cannot walk into the new while holding tightly to the old. God is calling you to release, to let go, to trust him fully with every part of your life. Will you answer the call? Will you trust him enough to step out in faith, knowing that he has something greater waiting for you? As we wrap up today's discussion, let's reflect on what we've learned. We've explored the importance of releasing the past to step into the future, the value of trusting God through trials, and the understanding that sometimes we must walk alone to walk into the greatness God has prepared for us. These lessons aren't just for us to hear, they are for us to practice. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What is one thing you've learned today that you will take into your life and put into practice? Comment below and share your thoughts. I'd love to hear how these lessons resonate with you. If you liked this video, please leave a comment and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss more content like this. Thank you for being part of our community. Let's continue to grow together.